Let's go on with what I was saying about going back home. When we talk about going back home, we mean that the character that we are return or go back to what I call the primary consciousness, to merge with the source, the primary consciousness. And let's remember that consciousness doesn't have a number. It's not that I belong to one consciousness and you belong to another. This is over. I understood many things and I have to go back home because I have nothing else to do here. Or I have been here for many lives. I fulfill the purpose of why I came. It has nothing to do with that because experience, human experience, the physical experience has no purpose. It's a projection of a desire, of a consciousness. It's a belief of an identity. So there's no purpose. There are not repeated lives and there is no evolution. It's simply that lives repeat because identity needs that and because we don't understand. I'll try to explain that now. So going back home is to merge with consciousness, to disappear, in the sense that the character in itself stops existing, although it's not as I'm saying it exactly. It's not exactly like this. The character stops to exist physically and it merges with consciousness, which is action. It's the source. Let's call it that, the source. Even if I call it vital force consciousness, the source, it's all the same. Consciousness came from there to do something else. But in fact, consciousness is source itself, is the drop that comes out of the ocean. So we have to go back to merge with that original water. But this is not a purpose of the human being. This is what I'm going to try to convey in this 5th video. There's no purpose for the human being. This is not a path either. It's not a path that we have to go back on or undo in order to go back to consciousness. And consciousness doesn't have to come here to pick you up. What am I trying to say here in Change of Reality? I'm saying that the path, what we see as an evolution between birth and death and the path where we have our history, our life, the path is a position. We position ourselves in a place in which the 3 times are happening at the same time because you have understood it. That position is perception. I keep saying this again and again. That position is the non-concept. To understand that the play is a concept, good and evil, and then they start getting together, they merge in one. When you see them as one, you have understood. Because physically, in that situation, you have acquired a level of consciousness that will not allow you to be here. That level of consciousness will make you not be here. I repeat, for the character to be here, the level of consciousness has to be extremely low because it's just a projection of an identity, of a consciousness that stopped being conscious, stopped being aware. It separated itself from the action and to carry out its own action and be conscious just with one purpose, its own purpose. That was the identity. We are the purpose of that identity. We are the same, but there is no purpose in life in itself. There's not a purpose for humankind. Let's not mix those things up. It's identity that has a purpose. That's why identity, the subconscious mind, is the trap, is where the programming is, where everything is, where good and evil are. And everything we do, everything we don't do is there. Everything is already there. It exists there in the subconscious mind. The question and the answer already exist there. The problem and the solution are both there. if we want to imagine anything, the subconscious mind will give it to you right away. Identity will give it to you because that's where the quantum field moves. And since it wants to be, it will give us anything, everything. We, from the other side, from where we are, will interpret that as evolution, as if, as if that gives meaning to life. And it's only a belief of identity that gives you what you want because you want to continue to live. So, going back home is a program within the subconscious mind, the identity, the being. It's all the same. This is a program. This is like a radio that is broadcasting. And there are more followers, more characters following, listening to this radio station. In itself is an entity, is a consciousness. Let's look at this picture here. We see pears and apples. This new radio station that talks about going back home or the awakening of consciousness or metaphysical ideas, the idea of their conspiracies. It's all there. Imagine, it's this identity, the pears. So for it to be more real, it needs more characters. What happens? Characters that connect with this station say, oh, this resonates with me. They are in that act, they're actors in that act, so they feel well there. They feel that that radio station that is becoming more and more strong connects with more people. And those people believe that that is true. So what happens within this circle, within identity, I keep saying that, let's place ourselves within this. There is not perception when you're in here. The subconscious mind cannot give you perception. It will give you knowledge. It will give you something that resembles perception. Because we believe in consciousness. We believe there is an awakening of consciousness. So it will create another radio station, another scenery, which is the same, but in which the circumstances and the characteristics we need at the present moment will appear. And that will seem to us that that is the awakening of consciousness. But we have to realize that it's the same thing. We keep thinking this is good, this is bad. The real path is in standing still. Try to stand in the center, neither good nor bad. Don't follow any station, any radio station. When people start to understand that this is not going back home, when people realize that that is just a new concept, that's when they start to perceive. Because otherwise, it's a concept. It's a concept that is still focused on good or bad. And people start thinking, I want to get out of this play. This play is a mistake. Well, there is some truth in it. But the mistake is to believe that this is real. So if you say that the play is a mistake, you are starting from another mistake. So what is good? What is good? To step out of the play. You're not going to get out of the play by describing it. It may seem so, but you will not. In order to get out of the play, you have to position yourself. You cannot continue to live the same. You cannot continue to define reality. Why am I here? There is a here, a future, a beyond. When you have consciousness, when you have perception, you cannot continue to be doing this. And I'll explain that here in this video. To understand what I'm going to say now is the previous step to understand the no time. I'll explain that as a previous step. I explain this in the talks I do about cause and effect. You have to Watch these videos in order to understand what I'm going to say. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. I call this a previous step because I need to do that. I need to say it this way. This is a way to talk. When you understand the no time, you stop asking why. You understand everything. Okay, let's consider that this balloon here is the subconscious mind. I understand that you already know. Identity, whatever you want to call it. This is the room, this is the play. It's circular, all the times are happening at once here. Why do I put pears here and apples? Because I'm going to explain it with a visual example to transmit what I want to say. What are entities? They are going to help us. They're not really entities, but I'm going to explain it. I explain, and at the same time I gather back. I get it back. Because if we stay there, we cannot understand. All this would be useless. This would be a waste of time. Because that means we are creating another scenery in the play, another entity. And that's not my intention. That's not perception. If you perceive, you have to position yourself here. Let's suppose that here there are pears, there are apples, and there are potatoes. These are examples of entities. It's us, all the elements within the play, within the world. What we know, what we don't know, what we are going to know. So when we were little, they told us, okay, put a circle around what are foods. These are 3 examples of food. We would circle all of them together. Potatoes and pears and apples. That's an entity. Let's put the character here. We are the character at the present moment with our name right now. And we would be, maybe one would be very connected to the entity of pears. But since pears are food, that is, since we believe that it's food, it's only a projection. But you are also connected to potatoes and apples. However, imagine that they're tomatoes. Let's imagine that. And we would say food that are red. So we would say only apples and tomatoes. And maybe that character that was previously connected to pears and was connected with potatoes, the entity of potatoes at the same time, and the apples, because it was connected with food, and then tomatoes because it's another food, it's in another subgroup, that is the entity of red color, might not be connected there, but not through that, not through color red. This happens with everything, with history, with ideologies, with philosophy, with religion and science, with our personal life, our programming, being a man, being a woman. Everything, absolutely everything. Anything we want to say is there. So we are all connected. At the end, that's how it is. It's not that I am only connected to pears. No. What do we do whenever we ask? When we ask, where do I come from? Maybe in a previous life I was a man and now I'm a woman. It doesn't matter. At the end, we are all the same. We are just keep going round and around like a merry-go-round. It doesn't matter what we are. At the end, when you ask something, you'll get an answer. Or maybe you may not get it, but when we say the universe responds, it's the subconscious mind that is giving you an answer. So we say, oh, wonderful, great, now I'm right. So that frequency gets thicker, gets stronger. That belief gets stronger. We're not solving anything. We are just getting even more and more separated from the original design if there was one, that's a point of departure. I need to imagine so I don't even lose myself, get lost in my explanation. I'd like you to go back to this first explanation. Let's go back to the first impression of what identity first saw. That first vision, we are completely separated from it because we have asked questions, and the answers make you walk, make you advance. And along this path became a labyrinth. We were originally in a paradise. Remember the example I gave? We were in an ideal place, sandy, wonderful weather. We didn't need shoes, we didn't need clothing. But from the moment we walk outside of there, we were surrounded by other surroundings. We started to have needs, new geography, new environments. So we have a load. We agree to have a load, to carry a load through the identities when we're born. We are all connected with agreements within identity. The agreement is that I'm born at this time, in this period, so I give the opportunity to previous times to exist. It's a common agreement. We are so far away from the origin. We have so much load, we cannot go back to the first impression, which in our case is, for instance, to be a man or a woman. And when I say this, I refer to the concept of the no couple, the original design, the first impression of what it was like to be a man or a woman. We are so far away from that when we want to gather that back, we cannot do it because we are lost. As energy, we are lost. I have a female energy that is part of a total or a whole energy that another may have it as male energy. But we have mixed up these so much, and we have so many entities, given the social evolution and given the mind, the concept we have about good, equality, society, the couple, the children. This has nothing to do with what I'm talking about, but we could talk a lot about these. But the problem is there in the human being, the individual. But since we have so many purposes as male, females, we cannot see the original energy. We can see the original energy of a lion. We love to see wild animals because they behave as they are, as we believe they are. A plant, stone, the air. But we don't, not anymore, because we already have the concept of good and evil, of traditions, what was always appropriate. And the purpose is not to go back to the first impression, but the issue is that we have to regulate this energy. Why? What do I mean by that? What I mean is that this character, and let's go back to this picture here with the pears, this character who is here, that it's all of us, it's connected to all the identities, to the sub-identities and the sub-identities. If it's not for one reason, it's for another, but he's connected with everything. Maybe I'm not related or connected to the tomatoes because I am more of a pear. So maybe I'm not connected because of the color, but maybe I'm connected because I'm vegetable or food also. What does that mean, to go back to that first impression? To try to be more original, to go to that first design. It would mean to have less connections. So we would not have so many distortions. And I dare say one more thing. That is the path towards perception. A person that has so many connections is very far from perceiving very far, even from understanding what I'm trying to say here or what I try to say in my first video. So when people are in this new religion, new age, don't understand this, they don't like this, because what they are doing is to accumulate more knowledge. They are still caught between good and evil. They're on that line. And when they listen to me, this doesn't make any sense, because I'm saying there's no purpose. And they say, well, I do have a purpose. I'm awake now. So there's also new businesses being based on this new age, which is perfectly filed. Everything is fine here. Money is just an energy transaction, and it's okay how you make it. But money is a transaction, and everything is fine. It's acceptable. I'm not against that. I'm not in favor of that. I'm just saying that that is a business. And if you're in one of them, great, you might become a millionaire. So this would be to go back to the original design. And some people say, but if you are communicating perception, why are you talking about the non-couple? Why do you stop to talk about that? I wonder what that has to do with this. Not all of us can perceive at the same time, but we can understand this. And now, with what I'm going to say now, you'll understand what I mean. What this person asks is because he or she has not understood. They say, okay, don't take shortcuts to get out of here. Well, we already have them. It's better to undo the path you have walked. So you can go back to an area where good and evil are closer together. From the first impression, there was already this conflict. But back then, the good and evil were not so extreme, so far from each other. So there were less conflicts in the past. And I don't need to describe reality nowadays, do I? Or is there anyone that thinks that with what we are doing, we are going to have a better world? Maybe they do, but it's not going to be better. It will be different. Because we are focusing too much on good. So evil is also becoming bigger. Because it's like a pendulum. More than a line, is like a pendulum that swings. And identity wants to live, so it tends to balance this. So now I'm going to talk about the character and consciousness. This is something I mentioned in one of the first videos I did. But now I can explain it so you understand it. We start from a mistake when we want to understand what I am transmitting here. And I realized the first times I started talking about this, because it's something I took for granted that people understood. But that was my mistake. I was inexperienced. I thought everybody understood what I already understood, because I had transcended it already in a natural way. But other people didn't see it. And please, this is the key to understanding. Let's have the character here. You are the character, I am the character with our name. You, me. That's the point of reference. And consciousness is movement. The primary consciousness, the source, is nothingness, but it's moving, it's force. It's love. Not love as we understand it, opposed to non-love. It's something wonderful that is expanding. Let's call it primary consciousness or the source. So I have a point of reference. Although I'm not saying 1, 2, 3 in change of reality, I don't number things. Because mathematics are tools of the room. When people talk about planes, and levels, and they say here is better, there is worse, and but those things are facts just within the room, like a color, or I'm a woman, I'm this, I'm that. Outside of the room, there's not mathematics, and we cannot understand it. It's very difficult to understand that. That's why I talk about action, about movement, and ocean. You cannot count drops of water. It's action. So that's what I use as an example to communicate this. So we are a character, and obviously we are connected to millions of entities. What did I say in those first videos? That a character A, does not have one consciousness. There is not a corresponding character consciousness. It's just movement. So let's suppose that Pears, for instance, I have to use these examples to express what I want to say. And in order not to explain too much, this is an open system. If I try to explain too much, I corner myself. So, and I make it harder for you. So that's why I want to make it simple. So you use it as a simple example, and then you apply it to anything, and you'll see how it fits. Let's think that this character is connected to the Pears as a totality of his being. And now let's see how I can explain this. Remember, I spoke about the collective consciousness, the choir. And within there, you have the soprano, the baritone, the tenor. Well, the character is there. When we talk about lives and our past lives, my grandfather, my grandmother, regressions, karma, forget about that. The more you want that, the more you focus on that, the more identity will give you that. But in fact, we say everything happens at the same time. So if everything happens at the same time, why do you have to heal something from the past? It didn't happen, right? You understand it when you stop and you position yourself. Okay, this character, Pears, would be the totality. Allow me to give you this example. Okay, Pears would be the totality. And what is the totality? The whole. The whole of what that entity, the Pears, are. Maybe, could be, has been, or has never been, would never be. Because everything is happening at the same time. It all belongs to the identity. It's an open system. And it all depends on how you focus. When you focus on something, that's what you will see. So that's the totality of this character, this man, character A. When I take this character out of the choir, take it out of the pair so we can see him, me, you, that doesn't mean that he or she is, let's say, a being in his or her totality, representing a part of the play. This doesn't mean, I repeat, that this character is a being with his or her totality inside, representing one part of the play. No, this means that a fragment of this entity, of the consciousness of this entity, has turned or become character A to be something. A fragment of that entity has given birth to this character. And each character, we are fragments of the entities. So that's why we say that our percentage of awareness, of consciousness, is extremely low. Because for this character A to live, to be here, in this system, totally lineal of beliefs, he cannot understand. That's why Change of reality is not popular. It might resonate, but most people don't understand it. This character will not understand what I'm saying. Because in order to live here, he has to be connected to the totality. Because he's just a fragment, he's a drop. It's a drop of water that cannot do anything by itself. Until now, up to today. That doesn't mean that for some reason, there has not to be a cause, this character will obtain an amazing perception, a brutal, immediate perception. So he will disconnect himself, he will stop belonging to this entity. It's not a matter of belonging, but he will not need to be plugged in or connected because he has acquired a level of consciousness. It's like, it's imagine that you all of a sudden get solar energy. You don't need the artificial light you have at home. If I have constant solar energy, why do I need to use electricity at home? That is expensive. I can have I can have energy as long as I'm connected to the sun. So the character is not a totality of the identity. It's a fragment of the totality that is projected in a character. So this fragment can be projected in many characters. This tells us that not all of us can perceive at the same time because that fragment that has this character A, imagine that is living with this character B. I mean, living at the same time in the same space. But this character, B, is less of a fragment of that totality. What I mean is that it has more consciousness, more perception. He's less plugged, is less identified with identity. So obviously, he belongs to the subconscious mind, like we all do, and the entities it belongs to. But he already has a channel of perception to maintain himself here. So when at the same time these two characters are together, who will have a higher level or percentage of consciousness to perceive? Obviously, character B, because he's looking for it. He's too plugged in. And that's 99.9% of the world population, because if it were not that amount, the play could not be a play. Okay, so why do I give this example? So simple, but by being simple in a recording like this, helps me to be more precise. When I do my talks about eliminating cause and effect, I can explain them more in depth and better. I can give many more examples, and I love that. And when it's a face-to-face meeting with people, I can explain, I can talk about this for hours. And the people that are there, they say they like that. They want to talk about this more at length. But the important thing is that these people open up their channel of connection and they realize things just don't fit, things don't work out. So this I just said goes against, not because I want to go again or in favor of anything, but this goes against our original feeling that we are all the same. It seems that this contradicts that. Oh, this is terrible what she's saying. It has nothing to do with human rights. In fact, human rights had to be developed and described and be invented, quote unquote, or be defended because we don't understand this. It's a consequence of our ignorance, of being separated from that first vision. Therefore, when we say we are not all the same at the same time, what I mean is that we don't have the same percentage of consciousness. And that's when you understand many things. When you see people that are expressing themselves through something else. And that's the majority of the people. Whether they are part of your family, they can be your partner. I've met people, not many, but some, that they don't have such a distorted relationship with their partner in a couple, as most people do. So these people see the partner who is with them, they realize that they need each other, which is fine, it's perfect. That's the point. That's what you have to do. But they think that they are a different couple. In fact, they are. But because they don't have the traditional concept of couple, they're both part of an entity. And they believe they need each other to complement, to fulfill a whole. They believe it, but they don't need it. You don't need it. This happens until one of those two people, all of a sudden, one of the two in the couple has a perception of reality, and they realize that they never needed anything. You never needed anybody. You never needed anything. And be careful, this is not a method, because every method has a path, is inviting you to go somewhere, which is fine, because if it helps you to feel better, that's great, because we're here to enjoy this. And if something burns me in that way, I don't want to go that way. That the path of suffering is not the right one. I'm not going to be stronger just because I suffer. What I want to transmit with change of reality is no effort, pleasure. That's something else. That's when we see the characters always identifying themselves with many identities or entities, with families, with good, with tradition. You belong to a club. You identify with your moral values. Everything. We all have something. Because if we look at ourselves, we all have something. What is it about? When you start to be more disconnected, you feel weird. You feel odd because you are not connecting with that. You are emitting, and you hear what they're broadcasting out there, but none of that reaches you. None of them resonates with you, and you cannot relate with the outside world easily. But you don't have to look for another radio station where you find comfortable, because if you find it, great, it's okay if you find it. But what does that mean? That you just connected yourself with another entity. It's another entity that joins your totality, and that's not you, your real you. It's just that totality of that consciousness within the subconscious mind creating entities, and you are there just joining another one. That's what we question. We ask, who am I? Because we are fragments of a totality, but it's not even a closed totality. It's a totality that it's always being. That's why there's no reincarnation. It's like an incarnation of the entity, of the fragments of consciousness. It's not me as a character that I reincarnate again. This makes sense. If I die now as Ruth, and then I die and I become Joe, maybe I do. Maybe it could happen. But the normal thing is that we mix, we merge in the totality, and we have other functions, especially when we have a big purpose. I'm going to give an example. A person with a big purpose, quite connected to an entity, dies in this physical life, A, Joe, and he wants to continue with that purpose, but he needs something, but it's not Joe anymore. It's the fragment. He needs more characters to develop what he wants to do. So he's not going to reincarnate in another person, another individual, but maybe in a human group at the same time to be able to fulfill his purpose. Do you realize what I mean here? It's not one from one to another and another. Like I individually, I have been a million lives. I have gone through everything. And now I am understand what this is all about and I go back home. It doesn't work like that. It's something else, completely different. And I know this breaks with everything. What I don't mean here is that everything else is bad. Please don't misunderstand me. It's almost offensive when people say that about me. I'm trying to be as honest as I can be from my position. And having to justify myself is almost offensive, quote unquote. But since this experience is about good and bad, for those who don't understand sounds bad. But so if you start from a mistake, everything I'm saying is another mistake that follows another and another mistake. So we have to start from nothing. That's why I say you have to start from a blank, like a clean slate, and you eliminate cause and effect. Try to start from nothing. Position yourself in a place where there is no concept. Well, some people may achieve more information, may get more information. Some might be confused. But what they know, they don't know is that they might be getting disconnected from certain things. This echoes. What I say echoes with the life of many people and the environment of these people, the 3 times at the same time. But some people don't realize at the moment when this happens. Others do, but they don't describe it. Because if you start describing it, you go back to the same. So silence is the best thing and go on living from the non-effort and pleasure. Non-effort and pleasure. Understanding what I'm trying to convey here. So with this, I have reached the point. I got what I wanted to get. It's the beginning of the end. There's no character anymore. When you understand this, you understand many things. I understand. I know those that cannot get this. Not because they cannot, because they're not smart. I may be less smart. And in fact, I probably am less and less smart every day. But that's not the case. You just have to understand that they are fragments of consciousness that need other fragments of consciousness to be somewhat conscious, to have a level of awareness. When those people suddenly understand it, I know they don't, maybe, because they're making use of the role they have, that the entity needs to be, to exist, to be a fruit. You need the tree, so you're part of the tree. That's why I know that many people cannot comprehend this, and I respect it, always. Well, I don't have to respect it. It's respectable, per se. They have dignity, like I do. We all have dignity. We have it in us. But, by the same token, I repeat, this person that may not get it now, doesn't understand change of reality now. I've seen this already in very few cases, but I've seen it. They suddenly something clicks. Nothing happens. Nothing bad needs to happen in their life. But because sometimes when bad things happen, we focus even more on the entity. if you understand, you don't need to focus on the path of pain and suffering to learn. It's not the path of enjoyment and pleasure. That's just another path, another connection with entity. It's neither. It's pure logic. I'm fine here, I stay here. Wherever I feel more comfortable, I'll stay. And we should not function with effort. We have that in our DNA, and fighting and struggling. They say life is a battlefield, and I'll appreciate the good times if I've gone through bad times. We should forget that. We should be practical. I say things that are practical. Life is the play. It's not a fight. It's what is. So let's try to go on the path, be on the path that is least difficult. Not on the other one to try to get a prize. When we reward the heroes, we are also creating the focus on those that are not heroes. When we reward and applaud goodness, we're also creating the evil. And that has a lot to do with the energy. We don't know how to manage energy. When you do, you perceive. That's perception. But when there is perception, there's no play. And so the play is sustained and kept by 99% of the population at the same time, focus on the present, in the space at the same time. That's where most of the people are. The immense majority, 99.99. So it cannot be what I am transmitting. There is no purpose or intention in what I'm saying. There's nothing to save. You don't need heroes. People that say, I'm going to save the world. We just need to stay still and perceive. When you say you need to save the world, you'll get the characters you need to be heroes. Those characters that came as masters, as enlightened masters, they came to represent a role in the play that the people wanted. Those characters also created evil characters that had to represent or play the role of the evil in the play. Everything is a projection of us. Everything is there because we created. In my talks about cause and effect, we have to eliminate the concept of goal or purpose. The concept we have about good. When you understand this, it's like turning off the TV and you can go. The play is over. You understood it. You have no concept. There's no concept. You have no end, no goal. You position yourself and you realize there's no path. This is quite boring, really. For those who feel that life has a meaning, has sense, they want to give themselves, they want to find a purpose. What I'm saying is boring. Now is the time to feel that emptiness with millions of things. I'm talking here to the finder, to the person that is there without even knowing. And he or she finds himself or herself a little lost. Someone that realizes that he's not catching any broadcast. And I'm telling them, there is no broadcast. There is no radio station that is going to give you an answer. Because I'm not talking about the subconscious mind. I'm talking about perception. So it's normal. When you find yourself there, you find that you find weird. Because you're still playing to be a character, but you've already found out that this is a game. But the character has to survive. What do I do? Kill myself? That's not the path. That's not the way. So I say, well, let's just enjoy this. Not as a purpose in life. I'm just going to enjoy life. But just to find that point where things hurt me the least. Where I don't have to judge anything. Where I don't live by concepts or beliefs. I don't live having to defend myself. And try just to transcend all concepts, every single concept. Then that's the way you get to the last one, which is the concept of good and evil. And that's when, boom, that opens, and we are not characters anymore within the play. Let's say that Just to give you an example, to be more explicit, more specific. It's like we left, we left a little bit of the air out of the balloon of consciousness, that entity, and we leave. It's not that I leave as Ruth or Joe or Mary. We leave as perception, because this doesn't exist. This is a character. And to understand this is to transcend fear of death. Why? I'm saying this all the time. Because the character is not important. I said that at the beginning in one of my first videos. If the character is not important, he or she shouldn't be afraid to die. I don't exist. I'm not important. I know this hurts a lot to many people, because the fear of death is a primal fear we all have. And when you comprehend this, when you understand this, you stop fearing death. You're not afraid to die anymore, because the fear of death ties you to the play. That's fine. It's okay, because that's the first fear. Why are you afraid to die? Why are we afraid to die? Because we are very identified with our bodies, with our name, with our stories, with the people that we have interacted with our families. That's why it's important to transcend that. You should not identify yourself with anything. Now you realize in this fifth video, I'm going back to the beginning. When people start to understand the perception of change of reality, they tell me, Ruth, you're talking about the same. And it's really that I had one point, I started from one idea and I developed it, and now I'm going back to it. I explain things to you so you realize that none of that was necessary, because everything is the same. Everything goes back to one point, one situation. It's perception. It's ideal. It's neither good or bad. Until you get there, we will continue to be in the play. This helps me come to the end of this part. I have displayed the concept of perception, and if I continue to talk about the character, it's as if I gave more importance to the character. When I talk about eliminating cause and effect, I explain the concept of no time. I talk about no time. That's wonderful. It's like an orgasm. It's like one person says, I'm starting to understand this. It catches my attention. This is very interesting. And I'm so curious. People say to me, it's impressive. It's amazing what I'm learning. And it's true. We enjoy this. There's something that keeps us alive, learning. But when you start understand the no time is that you understand, you get perception. You acquire perception. That's the only way. It's like an orgasm. It's more than a pleasure. It's much more than that. So when you get it, when we merge completely, for those who are afraid, because here we are all afraid. I am afraid. We're all afraid here in this experience. But when we merge with the consciousness, that is the absolute pleasure in time. There's no time. We are out of space, out of time, and we understand that this never happened, and this is gone. This is eliminated. It's wonderful. It's a constant pleasure as consciousness, just as consciousness. Let's forget about the character. As long as we're here, yes, we are characters and we are important. That's normal. And we have to be. We just have to be. But inside of ourselves, we should get rid of that concept, which is exactly the opposite of what society does. Society is trying to make you feel important. that the character you are is important. So we maintain this identity. You have to consume. You're a consumer of your own fears. The new age also feeds you more fears, just because out of lack of perception and consciousness, not because they mean bad. No one is good or bad. Sometimes we act in different ways, but we're all within the game. But in order to say this person is horrible, this person doesn't deserve to live, this is horrible, there has to be a person that is wonderful, is marvelous, is the paramount of kindness. So we focus on those, a model of goodness, but it's the same. Both are the same. We create both. That's why I say the least we judge, the better. Be still, be quiet, pleasure, less fear. That's eliminating entities, making them smaller, getting the air out of the balloons of different entities, eliminating conflicts that create fears, and fears that come from beliefs. Because when we believe in one thing, we create its opposite, but it's another belief. And then we say, I'm shocked. I thought the law of attraction worked, and I thought I was going to attract this, and then I attract the opposite. Well, it's because when you get one, you get the opposite. When you focus on something, you are attracting its opposite. So we live in a constant fear. So when you stop, you don't judge, and you see the concept that is behind the beliefs that took you to the concept of good and evil. Because behind anything, there is good and evil. Don't take any shortcuts. Go straight to eliminate the concept of good and evil. Okay? Some people need to go slower, need maybe bypasses. Another concept is the concept of couple. In the original design, there was not a couple. Let's understand that. Please, it's so obvious. It's a concept. So when I say you have to go beyond the concept is good, is glued to the concept of good, because behind the concept of couple is the concept of family, of social order. Go to that, to the concept of good and bad in silence, and you can see everything. So this is it. This is the end of this 5th video. Here I've talked about the character. I'll talk later on about eliminating cause and effect. But you need to understand what I've talked about in this video. When you understand that we are just characters, when you transcend the concept of character, that's when you can move on to understand the concept of no time. I'm always here in changeofreality.com, cambioderealidad.com in Spanish. Many people ask me questions, but everything is on that page. Everything is answered in these videos. Perception, change of reality. Everything is here. I answer everything. Well, thank you very much for following, for having come all the way here with me. And I hope you continue to watch the videos. Even if you are confused, watch them again. Maybe you won't get a revelation, but it might open a channel of perception for you that might manifest, might come back to you later, and you will get it later. If you feel rejection, if you reject what I'm saying, if you don't like it, you just turn it off and put it away. Maybe you might want to come back to it later. Don't get hooked to this. I am not transmitting anything that can be transmitted. I am giving you something, a perception to help you say, okay, I can understand this. This is happening to me, and maybe I'll help you disconnect, and then you will perceive that you're beyond the character that is here. And when a character perceives completely and merges with consciousness, he or she takes all the fragments that this character made use of, or that entity, the entity that made use of those characters to be, to exist. That is perception. Everything is annulled. Everything is gone. Thank you very much for being there, and we will be in touch. I'll be here and being updated in Change of Reality. Goodbye.